Okay, as I look at the model, now that we've got most of it in place, there's a few little tiny things I realized that we're still missing before we get to some of the material stuff. One of them is the entry door, which is pretty simple. I think what we'll do for this is we'll just select these two and move copy into place. We'll bring this over a little bit so it's actually looks like it pretty much lines up. So I'll open this up by double clicking on it, push pull this to match that point, snap a little guide down on this line, and then drag another guide back 6 inches, snap a guide down here. We're never going to see the outside of this, so I'm really not worried about this having a double line or chamfering this at the corner. So I'll double click on this and then group it, open it up, push pull it up into place, and then I'll take the rectangle tool from this point to that point, which just creates a nice roof. Double click and group that. Okay, what else? There's also, I noticed, a little missing piece here. So it's kind of nice to just take stock and see what we've got. Let's select this piece, open it up by double clicking, and grab this whole piece and move copy it over. Just using my move tool, move that into place, and then push pull it until it hits the end. Okay. And then I can delete those guides. Alright, so the model is basically where we want it to be. We're going to put some glass in place, absolutely, and we're going to, and we're going to put all the materials into this model, but before we do, we want to now deal with the plan and the floor, because we still have this big pool in place. I'm not going to worry about this ramp, because in our next iteration of this model, we're going to actually get rid of the pool, but for now, let's put it in place. Okay, the first thing I think we should do is we should make a copy of this plan. And I think we should make a copy of this plan down along the blue axis as opposed to off to the side, because we still want the plan to be in place just in case we ever want to verify anything again. Right now, we have pretty much everything in place where we want it to be, so the plan is not as important to us anymore. Let's select this plan and move it down into place. Straight down. And I'll just go straight down 10 feet. Let's make it 20 feet. Type in 20, enter. Okay, so we're moving it down 20 feet. Okay, now we're going to, this is going to become our floor slab. So let's verify that both of these are still on the plan layer by pulling up the layers window and turning plan off and on. Okay, good. So this is still going to go away when we want it to. Let's take this piece now, this part of the plan, and let's right click and explode it. So this is now its own editable shape. We can now select individual pieces of it and move it around. We can push pull it if we want, all of that good stuff. And let's verify whether or not that stuff is on the appropriate layer. Okay, so this is still on the plan layer, which is fine. Let's double click on this and go to Entity Info. And let's move all of this to layer 0. And let's verify that we got it. Okay, so this plan is still on the plan layer, which is good, and this is now on layer 0. So let's turn plan off, and let's look at this for a moment. I'm going to just trace along the edges of this to create the separate lines that we want to create for material's sake. So notice as I make these rectangles, we start to get some funkiness on the inside. It just basically reverses this face. I think it somewhat confuses the program when you start to make shapes outside of other shapes. Okay, let's push-pull this pool down in space 8 feet. And let's find a point at the midpoint using our line. We're going to draw a line from the midpoint from one side to the other. And then we're going to select this point, or this line I should say, and move it up along this axis 4 feet. Just creating a little bit of a slope. Now I know that this is not exactly how a real pool is, but just for the sake of this model, especially since we're going to ultimately get rid of it, that's fine. Let's make sure we triple click on this to select the whole thing and make that a group. Lastly, we want to put a plane sitting along the top of this. Select this and make it a group. I'll open this up. Right click and reverse face. This is going to be our water eventually. Now I'll move it down about 2 inches. Okay, so we have our pool and we have fixed the last little bits of what we need to fix over here. Now lastly, what I want to do is I want to put the glass in place. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this elevation by just selecting this stuff and hiding it so that it's easier for me to get inside. And I can see that this needs to come up a little bit to meet this. So I'm going to open this up, but right away I can see that this is a component. So I'm going to select this, make unique, and then open this up and push-pull this up to meet that point. In fact, I'll push-pull it up a little bit through, just so it's nice and neat. I'll make a line here from this point to this point, and then push this away so that it disappears. All right. Let me go ahead and hide this column as well so I can see what I'm doing. Looks like we're going to have a lot of repeat shapes. So we can probably work with some components in this aspect, but this is glass, and this is going to be pretty easy to deal with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a rectangle, double click on it and group it, and then copy it. I'm not worried about making this into a component in this case. So I've got 1, 2, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 copies. So times 7, enter. Okay, that's my lower pane now. Do the same thing on this point. Starting from this point to this point with a rectangle. I double click, I make it a group, and then I activate my move tool and I copy it. Times 7, enter. Here it's rather nice because I can select these. So I hold shift down and select all of these panes of glass. And I copy up times 2, enter. Okay, here's something that I just am noticing as we're kind of really focused on this. This guy here does not want to shoot all the way up through all of these horizontal mullions. So because this is a component as well, I have to right click first while the group is closed and make it unique. Then open it up and push-pull it down so that it hits the bottom portion of this door, because this basically all this is the support on the side of the door. Now I can copy 2 of these over using my copy and move. And it looks like they're slightly off because this is a little shorter. So I will scale these in. Click. Okay. Now I can select this grouping of 3 and copy this up into place. You may be wondering at this point why I didn't just make one big giant piece that I stick in this whole thing. And the reason for that is because that some of these pieces of glass are clear and some of these are frosted. And there comes a point where you just kind of split the difference when you think how long something's going to take you. Let's fill these in here as well. Double click that to make it a group. Double click that and then make it a group by hitting G. I'll go ahead and again change this material when I change all the materials. Alright, these last few I'm going to have to draw manually. But I think I'm just going to use a line, even though it's an arc at the top. It's a really subtle arc, so I'm just going to use lines to do this in the interest of time. You should too. So starting at this bottom corner to that point, draw a line to that point, and group. Again, line tool, and group. I have never been able to figure out specifically why sometimes you get the blue background or purplish background and sometimes you get the white. Someday we'll solve that mystery. Okay. Point to point and down. And group. And look, it looks like here I made it a little too far over. See how I overshot it a little bit? I'm going to take my line tool and just correct that really fast. With my select, I can go ahead and now delete that stuff. So now it's lining up a lot better. So line tool, S for select, and G for group. And I'll go ahead and not bore you. I'm just going to go ahead and fill the rest of these in, and I would do the same, and then we'll work on this other wall.